Thank you very much, Mr Deputy Speaker, and I declare an interest as a Norwich City supporter and Kings Lynn Town FC fan as well. And like the Honourable Member, I think it's fitting that on St George's Day we're talking about our national game that is loved by millions of people in our country. And as we've heard, the Premier League is also the most watched league in the world. And last year, the EFL had the highest attendances for over 70 years, with over 21 million supporters passing through turnstiles. So football is a great success story. And it's in that context that we consider this bill and proposals to create a new regulatory structure for the game. As the explanatory note set out, football was previously not regulated by statutory provisions, and the measures are unique and unprecedented. So my first point is the one I made a year ago when the government published its response. We need to ensure this is a truly proportionate regime and be mindful of the success of the game. That means having a light touch regulator, which ministers have committed to. The government response set out the regulator would operate an advocacy first approach to regulation, meaning it would use constructive engagement rather than formal intervention wherever possible. However, that can be better reflected on the face of the bill in the objectives and duties of this new regulator. Otherwise, the risk of mission creep is more likely to materialise. We've heard a number of contributions already this afternoon where the regulator is being actively encouraged to expand its scope even before it's been set up. I support the objectives of financial soundness and resilience, as well as safeguarding the heritage of football. The ground, the crest, the shirt colours and the name of a club are all part of the DNA. And incidentally, Norwich City can boast the oldest song in world football, On the Ball City. I won't sing it. However, football is competitive. It's about promotion, it's about playoffs, it's about passion. So the regulator must also understand the essence of the game and not reduce it to a dry technical analysis of P&Ls and impose a banking-style straitjacket on clubs. As a member of the Regulatory Reform Group, and I see the Chairman entering the Chamber as I speak, I welcome the principles set out in Clause 8. However, they can certainly be strengthened to deliver that light touch regime that's so important. And the scale of the task we're going to be asking the regulator to undertake is considerable. It has to review detailed business plans of 116 clubs and reach agreement on them. In addition to the mandatory licence conditions, the regulator can impose discretionary requirements on any or all of those clubs, which will have to be bespoke, which will then also have to be monitored. Clearly, that comes at a cost which hasn't really been discussed in the debate so far. The impact assessment estimates the new regime could cost £132 million over 10 years, admitting there's a lot of uncertainty because it doesn't know precisely what conditions the regulator will put in place. That's money spent today by clubs on football that in future will be spent on the costs of regulation. And the National League is not the only one that's warned about the risk of the burden on the smaller clubs. So in licensing, the regulator must avoid duplicating existing requirements and ensure that it adopts a proportionate approach to the levy. But clearly, a key driver of the legislation is money and how revenues are distributed through the pyramid that's so essential to the health of the game. This has been agreed on a voluntary basis to date, and it would be better if football came forward with its own solution. However, if that doesn't happen, obviously Part 6 of the bill is there and sets out the backstop mechanism where either the Premier League or the EFL can trigger it, and if mediation does not work, then a committee of experts drawn from the regulator's panel will consider final proposals from both. However, I have to confess to finding the decision process curious at that point, as rather than look at each proposal and then adjudicate and determine what the best overall approach is, which could be between the two proposals that's been put forward, the regulator can only opt for one of them. In any negotiation, if both sides feel a bit disappointed at the deal that's reached, then it's likely to be fair. In this scenario, however, only one side will win. So I asked the Minister, why create an expert panel and a regulator if it is then not able to apply its own judgment? And given the importance of this provision, I hope the Minister will outline the Government's thinking on that point, what consideration has been given to how that can be gamed, and also look again at those provisions as the bill goes forward. Regarding revenues, I briefly focus on parachute payments. These are important elements in enabling clubs promoted to invest and, yes, to take risk, a calculated risk, so they can compete. If parachute payments were removed, then clubs like Norwich City, who are run sustainably, and could get promoted, and I'm optimistic for the playoffs this year, would not have the confidence to invest, knowing that if they go down this path and get relegated, there would be no smoothing of their income. So I support the approach in clause 55. And finally, I return to where we began, the fan-led review. During COVID, clubs were not able to let fans in, and Kings Lynn Town and others had to take sports survival loans. 13 million of those were issued, and the repayment of which threatens the viability of some clubs. So as we look at financial resilience, I encourage the Minister to look at allowing clubs to convert, say, up to 49% of the loan that they've taken out and give it to shares for supporters' trust. That would create a legacy of community ownership, something that would be very worthwhile and reduce the burden on clubs as well. To conclude, football is an important part of our national character, and as the bill proceeds, it's essential the regulator works with the game, with the clubs and with the league to ensure it continues to flourish.